Welcome everyone to NEK Day at the Statehouse. My name is Abby Long, and I am the Interim Executive Director for the Northeast Kingdom Collaborative, and I am so honored to be a part of such an energizing day because I feel so strongly about our region. And not just because we're surrounded by stunning working landscapes, world-class recreation, inspiring creative arts, and award-winning food and drink. Let's be honest, it's the cheese. I love the cheese. But because it's my home, it's my chosen community, as it is for so many of you in this room. And we all want our home to thrive. All that I just listed is due in part because of our beautiful rural nature. And we love that. We wouldn't have it any other way. Yet that rural character layers unique economic and social challenges. We are geographically isolated, experiencing consistent population decline and deep poverty. So much so that the federal government has designated our region a REAP zone, Rural Economic Area Partnership Program. We are one of only 5 in the nation. And we thank Senator Welch and our other federal delegates for advocating on our behalf for this designation in DC. The NEK Collaborative houses this agreement with USDA Rural Development, as we are supposed to receive extra and priority federal funding directed towards economic and community development efforts. And it is the Collaborative's role to consistently keep our pulse on what our region needs, to share back with USDA and policy and decision makers at all levels of government, what does our home need to thrive? Where should those resources and support be directed? And that is what we are doing here today. It was clear at the annual NEK Together conference back in November, we gathered, the folks in this room shared, housing, healthcare, affordability, flood and climate resilience are our highest priorities. We also know education reform is up for discussion in the Vermont Statehouse this session, and we will absolutely be lending our voices to equitable rural education for the futures of our communities. So I thank you, Senator Welch, State Treasurer Mike Pichek, Representative Marcotte, Representative Harpel, and of course, Lieutenant Governor John Rogers, for showing up for the kingdom, listening, and advocating for our home. And I thank all of you, my NEK neighbors, for showing up for the kingdom, lifting up your voices, sharing, and advocating for our home. Thank you. Senator Welch. We're so grateful you're here. Thank you.
All roads lead to the Northeast Kingdom. I am so happy to be here. I really am. It's just great. One of the press persons asked me what's it like to be back, and it's like it makes hope alive. I mean, you guys like try to solve problems. I mean, come on down to Washington. I can't say it's the same thing. But you know what's so special, Abby? It's one of the real joys of my job is that I get to go to the Northeast Kingdom quite a bit. And I went there actually more than I would have liked to because so much of it was related to the floods we had on July 11th, right, of 2023, July 11th, 2024, and July 11th, 2025. And it was just unbelievable, hard, and cruel. And what was, though, inspiring to me was that the immediate response from the local people, the select boards, the town managers, just the volunteers, was impactful, it was practical, and it got things done. And then suddenly, when it got to the recovery stage, and the decision-making shifted to Washington or to Puerto Rico or to one of the 4 places around, no decisions were made, and people were left who were ready to go, had a way to find somebody who had the bulldozer or the backhoe or whatever the practical thing was needed, who could make a decision about whether it was time to get, you know, a 24-inch culvert to replace the 12-inch culvert for the next flood. There was no ability to make those decisions. and there was this incredible bureaucracy. So it's one of the reasons why in Washington now I'm working so hard. And by the way, on this with Republican colleagues, because it's not like storms attack you or your community on the basis of what the political vote was the last election. The weather will work its will wherever you are. And what we want to do is reform FEMA, not abolish it, as the Secretary Noem is suggesting, but to essentially empower people locally to be able to make their decisions, to have control of the money, to be accountable for how that money is spent. If somebody messes around with the money, there ought to be a prosecution. But if you're going to get things done, rely on the people who have an enormous incentive to make it happen quickly and do it efficiently. You know, one of the things that I think we kind of intuitively understand in Vermont, and this is, again, something so significant about the Northeast Kingdom. You know, in a lot of places, if you have a degree, you have the credentials of being smart, then somehow you're smart. You know what being smart is? It's figuring out what needs to be done. And it means being willing to then do what is required to have it be done. And you know, I've lived in rural Vermont. When I first was here, I was in Heartland. And I came from law school, so I was like, quote, smart, right? No. I was not, because I was clueless when it came to like the organization of daily living around here and facing the problems that we had here in Vermont. But folks in rural Vermont figure it out. And you know, the role we have in government is not to do the handout deal, because people are so smart. But there's got to be at least a level playing field in some of the things where we have to have in place, like a rural hospital. And that means a healthcare system where we don't take everybody's Medicaid away. So when Sean Tester at the hospital is treating somebody who comes in, they at least have Medicaid, so there can be a reimbursement, and we don't starve the financial resources of the hospital. Or it also means that we've got to have broadband. And by the way, first class, not second class rural broadband. It's got to be state-of-the-art broadband. You know, not second rate. People who are there will figure it out. I'm not worried about, you know, can you figure it out? You do. But where the federal government has an absolute responsibility is to make certain that the basic, like infrastructure things, like broadband, like healthcare. You know, right now, farmers are going to start losing healthcare because we haven't extended the tax credits and the Affordable Care Act. You know, I had a Kingdom farmer who was a Trump voter, but a really, you know, we know a lot of folks like this, really good person, really smart person, figuring out how to create a farm that works and is sustainable for generations. He called me up and said his health care was $900 a month. It's going to $3,200. And it's not like he put the pressure to increase the costs. He just has to deal with it. Our obligation in Washington that's our job to do. And again, talking to Vermont legislators, you do such a good job. I'm glad. Get this woman out here. Let's give her a hand. Oh my God. Oh, it's so good to see you. She's who I'm talking about, all right? No, it's true. So, you know, what we know in Vermont is that we've had so many experiences where, you know, we might think we know a thing or two, and then we meet somebody who knows a thing or two or three or four. What you did with Kingdom Trails, it's unbelievable. Out of nothing, right? And now, what's the federal government doing? Insulting Canada, 51st state, the governor of Canada, and we don't have the tourism that we had before, not because of anything that anybody here did, it's because of what happened down in Washington. So, you know, our job, and this is what's so exciting to me to be back here, because everything I learned in politics was right here in this building. Our job as legislators is to make it easier for people who have much harder jobs than we have. They're farmers, they're deploying broadband, they're running a hospital. Our job is to make their job easier. And what I am dismayed at is in Washington we're making it harder. But what I see here is you're doing every single thing you can to face the day, the challenges that you have, and to make it more possible for Vermonters to succeed and have respect for one another, respect for everybody regardless of what their educational level is, because we have enough humility to know that there's a lot of smart people who know more than us, whatever our situation is. And we also have the humility to know the people who disagree with us, they're sometimes right. So we don't throw our weight around as though we know everything. So yes, it's wonderful, and no place better than the Northeast Kingdom to bring to the attention of Vermont and this nation the strength of rural communities and rural life. Our job in Washington is to try to make certain that the infrastructure that you need is there with your share of the tax resources. So thank you so much for hanging in there and making the kingdom the wonderful place that it is, and I can't wait to come back. And now, now we're going to hear from our treasurer, who is doing, I think, a really good job. Mike Pichek, you are doing a hell of a job.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Welch, and it's so great to be here, and I'm especially grateful that I'm participating in NEK Day, as I grew up in Brattleboro, just about as far away from the NEK as you can get, but still happy to be an honorary member here today. But you know, the thing I learned when I grew up in Brattleboro, and I learned this from my mom, you know, she started a soup kitchen in 1982 on St. Patrick's Day, and she ran it for 40 years. And I'd go with her when I was a little kid to people that were shut in and shut off from the community, and she'd be delivering them food, and she'd be delivering them a lot more than just food. But she was so kind and caring and patient and respectful to every single person that she encountered. And it instilled in me this idea that everybody matters, everybody has value, and everybody deserves dignity. And that's the high standard I think about when I try to hold myself up to as treasurer. And how do we do that in Vermont? We obviously need to make sure we build an economy and a state where everybody matters. And by doing that, we need to make sure every part of our state is invested in, and every part of our state matters. And there's no part of the state that needs that focus and attention and investment, in my opinion, than the Northeast Kingdom. You know, here in Vermont, we have a lot of benefits. We have a lot of advantages. I think one of our big advantages is our natural beauty. I think another big advantage is our outdoor access to recreation. I think another big advantage is our sense of community. Those are things that you can't replicate in other places. That's a Vermont advantage, but that is the advantage that's in the kingdom more so than any part of our state. You are a beautiful place with a lot of outdoor access to outdoor recreation, and you have a tight-knit sense of community. But ultimately, just like with Vermont, we all have to be able to afford to live here, and that's the big challenge. How can we make rural Vermont more affordable? And as the senator hit on, and as Abby hit on, there are challenges that are unique to rural Vermont, particularly when you're thinking about the effects of climate change. You know, there's already this economic difference between places like Chittenden County and Caledonia County, but now places like Caledonia County are being hit by the flooding. They're not only having to try to get ahead, but they're having to try to get ahead when a storm is hitting them every single summer, and they're putting it even further and further back. It's why we worked on a climate resiliency plan with the governor, and we passed it and presented it just a couple of months ago to provide a roadmap for building a more resilient Vermont, both broadly, but also in the kingdom. It's why we've focused on the kingdom for a proposal that we're calling First Steps Forward. This is an investment in young people in Vermont, but we want to focus on the kingdom, giving every child born into poverty a baby bond, $3,200 to invest in their future. So it makes it more easy for them to buy a house, start a business, go to school, or roll it over into the retirement and be able to afford to do it right in Vermont and right in the kingdom. It's why we also try to find opportunities to invest in housing in the kingdom as well. And we've done millions of dollars of investment out of our office in projects in the kingdom and want to do more. But we have to continue to focus on those affordability issues to make sure we have affordable housing, affordable access to health care, and just everyday affordability in our lives. I think it's the number one issue we're facing in Vermont, but I also think it's the number one issue that rural Vermont in particular is facing. And I just want to close on this. I think it's so important that you have NEK Day at the Statehouse, because when you're here in Montpelier and you're doing the work that we're doing, we need to be hearing from people out in the community. We only know what the problems are when people come and tell us. And when you have ideas and solutions, you're in a better place than we are to bring those to us and tell us about them and explain to us why we need to implement them. So it's so critical to have this voice and to have this advocacy and to do it in a concerted way and a directed way. And the last thing I'll mention, just with all the legislators that are up here as well, you know, our office, when we present proposals, and oftentimes we try to find proposals that will have obviously statewide impact, but a lot of times the proposals we have, I think, disproportionately benefit some of the rural areas of our state. The legislators from the kingdom are always there to step up and support us and work with us on what we're doing. It doesn't matter what the party is. It doesn't matter what the ideology is. Does this help the Northeast Kingdom? Does this help their constituents? Does this help their community? And it's always, always very refreshing to be able to work with legislators like that, including the next speaker, Representative Mike Marcotte, and he and I have been working together for almost a decade together, and there's probably no legislator that's a better friend to our office and a more effective advocate here in Montpelier for all rural Vermont than Representative Mike Marcotte, and it's my pleasure to introduce him.
Thank you, Treasurer Pichek. That's a high standard to live up to. Appreciate it. Senator Welch, thank you for being here today. You know, we talk about affordability, we talk about housing, we talk about education property taxes, we're talking about childcare. What we're really talking about is all the issues that we're having with our workforce. Without good housing, without housing stock, without having affordable childcare, without having affordable health care, we're not able to bring in young people into the state to take the jobs that are here already, to support the business community that we have already, to support the business community in the kingdom, bringing more people, the loss of tourism. I know firsthand, my wife is from Canada, from Quebec. My in-laws won't come down. Wow. They will not come down. We're in a crossroads now. We, as the state legislators, are working to try to fix some of these issues. Last year we passed the CHIP program. We'll bring up to $200 million in infrastructure investments to our small communities as well as our large communities. But we can't stop there. We still need to look at our permitting process, costing our businesses too much money and takes too long to get through the process. Just this morning, Representative Harple's committee, my committee, and Senate Economic Development held a hearing from Secretary Saunders from the Agency of Education and Commissioner Smith from the Department of Labor, talking about career technical education. How do we focus more career technical education in our schools? How do we integrate it more? How do we fund it? We're looking at a new vision for career technical education as we continue to look at a new vision for our whole education system. So these are things that we're working on now, but we still need to focus our energies on what we can do now and then look further into the future on setting things up so that we're able to be prosperous. We can bring young people into the state, that we're not just the second oldest state in the union. We need young people to come here, but we need good jobs, we need to support our businesses again, and we need good education systems, and we need good health care. So with that, I'd love to turn this over to my colleague from Glover, Representative Harple.
I'm so glad to see everyone here today, and thank you for joining us to celebrate the Northeast Kingdom. This is truly one of my favorite days of the year at the Statehouse. The NEK is where I was born and where I grew up, and where I am now raising my own children on the very same dirt road I grew up on. My love for the Northeast Kingdom runs deep. One of the things I cherish most about this place is that we have always done things a little differently and often a little better than the rest of the world expects of us. Today I've been invited to talk with you about rural education. I come to this not only as a legislator serving on the House Committee on Education, but also as a parent, sending my children through the same small school system that shaped me, and as a teacher whose entire career has been spent in rural Northeast Kingdom schools. But before I turn directly to education, I want to talk for a moment about something that Vermonters understand better than just about anyone else, and that's what it means to be small. In Vermont, 73% of our dairy farms are considered small, meaning that they have fewer than 200 cows. Most are family-run, multi-generational operations. They may not be the biggest, and they may not look the most efficient if you're only studying a spreadsheet, but I think every Northeast Kingdomer would agree that they are essential to who we are. No one in this room would seriously suggest that the path to efficiency is to shut them down or force them to consolidate into massive operations 3 counties away. Imagine that bill for a moment. If your herd is too small, you'll need to send your cows somewhere else, but don't worry, we'll bust them. We would laugh at that proposal, and rightly so. And of course, schools aren't farms, and they shouldn't be treated as such. And while we all know that kids and cows are not the same, the real point that I'm making is that smallness is a characteristic, not a failure. True Vermonters understand that something deeply important. Being small is not the same thing as being broken. Just like we would never tell small farms they failed because they don't look like Iowa, we also know that when it comes to schools, bigger is not always better. So we need to be asking better questions. What do our small schools actually contribute to our community, and how can we support them so that they can thrive? We know what our small schools contribute. They anchor communities, they pass down skills, values, and responsibility. They shape the character of the places we love, and yes, sometimes they need extra support. Sometimes they need to adapt, but we never start from the assumption that smallness itself is the problem. A small school isn't a failed school. A rural school isn't a business mistake. It's a reflection of who lives there and where they live. We can't legislate away geography, we can't consolidate rural life, and we can't remap Vermont into being something it's not. In the Northeast Kingdom, our schools are smaller because our communities are smaller, and that's not a flaw. It's a feature of a very special place defined by distance, independence, and strong local ties. Our schools know their students, they know their families, and they are often the heart of our towns. Strong rural schools are essential to strong rural communities, and if we want the Northeast Kingdom to have a future, if we want families to move in, stay, and put down roots, we must maintain and protect strong schools in those communities. Like much of Vermont, the Northeast Kingdom's population is declining. We all know that. Reversing that trend means attracting families who want to work here, raise children here, and become long-term members of our towns. Families move to places with good schools. Schools aren't just educational institutions, they are economic infrastructure. They are workforce development, and they are community stability. That's why equity and local decision-making must go hand in hand. Local voices matter. Communities know their children best. True equity doesn't mean forcing every school to look the same. It means recognizing that different places require different solutions. We're not saying small schools are perfect, and we're not saying that change is off the table. We're saying that consolidation should not be the default answer simply because something looks inefficient on paper. We're not anti-change, we're anti-quick fix. Whether we're talking about farms or schools, we are talking about essential community institutions shaped by rural geography. And in both cases, the mistake is assuming that if something doesn't meet a numerical threshold, the only solution is elimination. The real question before us isn't whether small schools should exist, because they already do. The question is whether we are willing to support them with the same respect, creativity, and common sense we show other rural community infrastructure. The Northeast Kingdom has always punched above its weight. Not by getting bigger, but by staying true to our roots, remaining resilient, and taking pride in who we are. If we continue to honor that, invest wisely, and listen locally, our rural schools won't just survive, they'll help lead the way. I am proud to be a rural teacher, a rural parent, and a rural legislator, and I hope you will join me in continuing to stand up for our schools and our children. Thank you. And I would now like to introduce you to our next speaker, who I'm also proud to share my hometown of Glover, Vermont with, our esteemed Lieutenant Governor John Rogers.
So great to see all my friends and neighbors and fellow Kingdomites. I started early this morning and drove to Jay Peak before I came down. And though, like a lot of you, I started early, the glory of the sunrise coming off the snow-capped mountains was something to behold, and that's something that's super special about our area. And I get the privilege of waking up every day that I leave after sunrise and seeing the green mountains, and it's really wonderful. As Abby started out with, you know, it's a wonderful place to be. We know we have great beer, we have great food, we have great recreational opportunities, and what really makes us special is we have great people, and a lot of great people. I grew up in a neighborhood in West Glover, a farm community where there were no blood relations around us, but we were as family. We shared equipment, we helped each other whenever they needed help. I tell you a quick story about my grandfather. One particular winter, he was getting low on firewood, and the snow was so deep he couldn't get to the woods where he usually cuts. So he went over to see his neighbor, Robbie Young, and he said, "Hey, Robbie, I'm a little low on firewood. Could I cut one of your big maple trees on the side of the road so I could get it over to the house?" And he said, Robbie stood there and looked thoughtful for a minute, and he said, "I'd cut one that leads towards the road." And that's what he did. But that's how our neighborhood was. Our neighborhood is luckily still much the same, that sense of community. But we do have challenges. Housing, big challenge. Much of the work that's been done here has focused on apartments and urban housing, right? I actually think that the Act 250 changes have taken us backwards as far as the Northeast Kingdom and the rural areas of the state are concerned. The road rule is going to make it so unless you have a ton of money, you are not going to be able to build on a piece of land that your parents or relatives give you if it needs a 800 or 900 foot road. They are literally saying that we need to conserve our land without compensation. They're taking it out of being able to be developed. And the folks that I talk to around the kingdom don't really want to live in an apartment in Burlington. If you do, that's wonderful. It's a great little city. I love visiting, but I want to go back home. The majority of the people that I talk with want a home on a little piece of land where they can raise a garden, maybe some animals, be connected to nature, and build that equity and intergenerational wealth that I think everybody wants to build, and that is something that doesn't happen if you're in an apartment. If you're in a big apartment complex, what we're doing is concentrating the wealth to the people and the businesses that own that apartment. So we're basically working for them. I think us rural folks, we want to work for ourselves. We want to be connected to nature. That's why we live in the Northeast Kingdom. Healthcare is probably my biggest concern, talking with people from around the state that provide healthcare services. Hearing from people, I get many calls in my office. A couple that I know, their insurance went up to $38,000 this year with a high deductible. Nobody can afford to spend $50,000 before they get $1 of coverage in their health care. As I said in the meeting earlier, the state of Vermont's going to do everything we can to plug those holes. But this is really where my friend Peter comes in. Thank you for trying to protect those subsidies, which are so important. But at some point, our federal government has to realize that we need a healthcare system, something we haven't had ever in this country. When we're talking about climate change and resilience, one of the things that I do on my farm is build deep organic soil. I think one of the best things we can do for the planet is to build deep organic soil and grow more food, and the Northeast Kingdom is placed perfectly to do that. When we build more soil, when it rains, the rain has a sponge to sink into, less runoff to cause the floods that we've seen over and over in the Northeast Kingdom. And I don't know if it'll do any good, but I spent some time going through my network and actually got a phone call in to somebody in the White House, some deputy director of intergovernmental affairs or something, and asked them if they could please take seriously the FEMA request for those folks in the Northeast Kingdom. Those small towns and those people have been hammered. We really need FEMA to step up and do the right thing and take care of everybody that's gone through one of those disasters. When we're talking about education, I've been touring our tech centers. We've got a lot of tech centers doing great work. We need to figure out how to make sure those tech centers are funded properly. And as I travel around to businesses, I'm trying to make connections so that we can build capacity by networking with businesses that are willing to take apprenticeships so that we can put more kids through those tech programs. If we are going to build the housing that we need, we have to build up the trades, because currently the majority of the contractors are building $1 million and $2 million houses for people who are building second homes, and there's few people left building the small homes that most Vermonters can afford. You know, I come from a farm family. I have deep roots in the community. I live on the farm that my ancestors settled in 1838, and now the 6th and 7th generation of my family are growing up on that farm. I don't have a lot of money, but I get up every morning and I look out at that view that money can't buy. I have clean soil, I have clean water. Two of the most valuable, important things on this planet are clean soil and clean water. And my life's mission is to pass it on to the next generations so that they can have the same and hopefully grow food and make sure that the working lands continue working, because that's what makes Vermont, Vermont. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Happy NEK Day. This has been such a blast. There's a few more committees this afternoon that folks are testifying in, but I'm so grateful to everyone for making the trek today and showing up for our kingdom. Keep it up.
I gotta run.
Okay, do your thing. Thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
Stop by.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it's about great.
That's great.
Done.
That was great. That was great. I'm so